Welcome! Let's dive into today's summary in a storytelling style. Once upon a time in a city, there lived a young man named Eli. He was a budding entrepreneur, passionate about his work but constantly struggling to find the motivation to push through the daily grind. His small tech startup had great potential, but Eli found himself often overwhelmed by the monotony of it all. The passion that had once fueled him seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a creeping sense of doubt. At first, Eli thought it was just the pressure of the startup world, the sleepless nights, the constant juggling of tasks, and the never-ending cycle of meetings and emails had drained him. But he knew deep down that something was missing. His drive, the internal spark that once fueled his every move, had fizzled out, and he couldn't figure out why. He had all the external rewards, money, recognition, and the potential for success, but they didn't seem to be enough anymore. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, Eli stumbled across a book recommendation on a podcast. The book was Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us by Daniel H. Pink. Intrigued by the idea of understanding what truly motivates people beyond traditional incentives, Eli decided to give it a read. As he flipped through the pages of Drive, Eli discovered a new way of thinking about motivation, one that shifted his perspective on both his work and his life. He began to understand that motivation wasn't about just extrinsic rewards like money, bonuses, or accolades. Pink argued that these external motivators, what he called extrinsic motivation, could actually be counterproductive in certain situations, especially when it came to complex, creative tasks like the ones Eli faced in his startup. But what struck Eli the most was Pink's exploration of the concept of intrinsic motivation. According to the book, intrinsic motivation is driven by internal desires and passions. It's the motivation that comes from within, from the satisfaction of doing something because it's meaningful or enjoyable, not because of a reward at the end of the road. Pink explained that intrinsic motivation is driven by three key elements: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. These are the true drivers of human behavior, and understanding them could unlock potential in ways Eli had never imagined. The first principle that Eli encountered was autonomy, the idea that people are most motivated when they have the freedom to make their own decisions. At first, this concept seemed counterintuitive to Eli. After all, as a young entrepreneur, he often found himself bogged down in decision-making, wondering whether his choices were the right ones. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that what he craved wasn't someone telling him what to do. What he really needed was the space to make decisions on his own and the trust that he had the ability to shape his own path. He remembered how, in the early days of his company, he'd felt more alive when he could decide what direction to take. Back then, the decisions were more personal, more connected to his own values. But as the business grew, the external pressures piled up. He began to feel boxed in by expectations of clients, investors, and even his own team. Inspired by Pink's words, Eli decided to take back some of that autonomy. He started giving himself and his team more freedom in how they approached their work. Instead of micromanaging, he encouraged them to experiment with new ideas and solutions. He allowed them to have a voice in the decision-making process and trusted them to take ownership of their projects. The shift was subtle, but it was powerful. Eli began to feel a renewed sense of energy, and his team's morale soared. They were no longer working for a paycheck. They were working because they wanted to be part of something bigger, something that allowed them to shape their own destiny. The second element of intrinsic motivation that Pink highlighted was mastery, the urge to improve at something that matters. Eli had always been driven by the desire to get better at his craft, but over time, the demands of running a business had left him little room to focus on personal growth. He realized that his constant focus on the next big milestone, raising funds, launching new products, or making the next sale had distracted him from the process of learning and improving. In reading Drive, Eli was reminded of the early days when he had been excited to learn new programming languages and explore innovative technologies. It wasn't about the external rewards. It was about the satisfaction of mastering something new, the feeling of progress and achievement that came from getting better at something he loved. Eli realized that to reignite his motivation, he needed to focus on mastery once again. He carved out time in his schedule to learn new skills and deepen his understanding of the areas that fascinated him. He joined online courses, attended workshops, and even dedicated time to read industry blogs and case studies. As he did, his passion for his work was rekindled. He was no longer simply chasing success. He was chasing growth, and that made all the difference. Mastery also had a ripple effect on his team. As Eli invested in his own development, he encouraged his employees to do the same. He created opportunities for them to expand their skills, offering mentorship and resources for professional development. The team began to thrive, and their excitement was contagious. With each new skill they acquired, their confidence grew, and their work quality improved. Mastery, Eli learned, wasn't just about individual growth. It was about collective improvement. The final principle that Pink discussed was purpose. This was perhaps the most profound realization for Eli. As an entrepreneur, he had always believed that success was about building a profitable business. But Drive taught him that true motivation comes from having a sense of purpose, understanding how your work contributes to something greater than yourself. At first, Eli had started his business because he saw a market opportunity and wanted to build something successful. But over time, he had lost sight of why he was doing it. Was it just for financial success? Was it just about being recognized as a leader in his field? The answer, he realized, was no. His company's products had the potential to make a real difference in people's lives, whether by improving productivity, simplifying daily tasks, or fostering creativity. That was the purpose he had been missing. It wasn't about the sales numbers or the accolades. It was about the impact his work could have on others. Once Eli embraced this purpose, his motivation soared. His company wasn't just a business, it was a vehicle for making a meaningful contribution to the world. Eli began to refocus his efforts on purpose-driven projects. He worked closely with his team to identify how their products could address real-world problems. He listened to customer feedback more intently, looking for ways to improve his offerings and make them even more impactful. The more they aligned their work with a deeper sense of purpose, the more energized and fulfilled they became. Months went by, and the transformation in Eli was undeniable. He was no longer the exhausted, overwhelmed entrepreneur he had once been. Instead, he was motivated by the intrinsic rewards of his work, the autonomy to make decisions, the mastery of his craft, and the purpose of contributing to something meaningful. His team, too, was revitalized. They worked with a renewed sense of passion and commitment, knowing that their work had a greater purpose. And while external rewards like financial success and recognition were still important, they no longer defined Eli's motivation. He had learned, through Drive, that true motivation comes from within, from the satisfaction of doing meaningful work, improving at what you do, and having the freedom to shape your own path. In the end, Eli's startup thrived not because he was constantly pushing for more sales, but because he had discovered the power of intrinsic motivation. He understood now that success wasn't just about external rewards. It was about creating a work environment that nurtured autonomy, mastery, and purpose for himself and his team. As Eli sat back one evening, reflecting on his journey, he realized that Drive had done more than just reignite his motivation. It had transformed his entire approach to work and life. And in that transformation, he found a new kind of success. A success built not on external measures but on the internal drive that had always been within him. Eli's journey from struggling entrepreneur to passionate, purpose-driven leader exemplifies the transformative power of intrinsic motivation, as outlined in Daniel H. Pink's Drive. By embracing autonomy, mastery, and purpose, Eli reignited his own drive and created an environment where his team could thrive. This story shows how understanding what truly motivates us can lead to greater fulfillment, productivity, and success. Closing. That's it for today's golden knowledge. Thanks for your valuable time. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps us grow and share more insights with you. And if there's a book you'd love to hear, drop its name in the comments. See you in the next one.